Hey everyone, what's going on? We are live here coming with Steve Woodruff today talking about clarity wins. Because if you're not clear,
Clarity.
you lose. I am excited to talk to Steve. Steve and I have been friends, gosh, 10, 12, 15 years, a long time. So he's been working on this book, maybe not that long, but I bet it feels like it, huh, Steve?
It feels like it, but since Twitter was only been around since what, 2007? So it
Yeah.
can't be before then.
Well, 2005 actually is the was the launch, I believe. I started in 2006. My first follower was Chris Brogan, a long time ago, and so yeah, it's been a while, man. So does Twitter even still exist? I'm looking here. I don't know that I can find it.
It's kind of sort of there.
Yeah, that's fun. Yeah, but that's how we got started, man. And I think I would argue that Twitter certainly helped you become more clear on what you are because you had to condense it down into 140 characters and really be clear.
I think it actually was very helpful for many of us. I was used to a more formal way of communicating, and Twitter really forced me to distill. And that's actually become kind of the hallmark of what I do is distill things. So Twitter had that very interesting built-in reinforcement mechanism of keep it brief or you can't.
Yeah, well, people cheat now, right? We get 280 characters. They can include links, but back when us old geezers started, we had to go 140 characters and leave room so people could retweet it with our handle.
That's correct. Yeah. I feel like we're some of those old geezers, on the porch now. Remember back when it was 140 characters, Phil? And yeah, now kids these days, I don't know.
Yeah, but it is interesting that how much that helped us, and you weren't always doing the whole clarity therapy thing. I mean, that wasn't always your thing. Your clarity fuel has come along. I don't want to. I guess recently for me, maybe because I've known you so long, but not for most. So how did that? How did that even kind of come forth, Steve?
Well, it's a kind of an interesting story. I started blogging and doing marketing stuff about 10 or 11 years ago. And I started blogging and doing stuff on those topics just because I was interested in it. I didn't know where it was going. I just was fascinated with social media, and I liked writing, and I liked the people I was meeting. So I just sort of blabbed out my stuff, as a lot of us did in the early days of blogging. And in fact, my very first marketing blog is a case study I still used in this book on UPS and how UPS wastes the real estate on their trucks by putting obscure messages like synchronizing the world of commerce on thousands of trucks, and only a tiny percentage of people will ever understand what that message is all about. Drives me insane. So even back then, when I first started, there was something about messaging that was really in my craw. But I started working as a consultant with a lot of small businesses that were servicing the pharmaceutical industry, especially in training. And I began to work with these companies if I was going to do targeted referrals for them, and that was my business. I was a referral matchmaker in that industry. So if I was going to do targeted referrals, we needed to get to their differentiators. And turns out a lot of these companies were just awful at their messaging. They, throw a bunch of bullet points against the wall and hope somebody buys something. So I'd sit down for a few hours with these companies and go through this branding exercise. And it was like this revelation. I could figure them out. And part of it's being an outsider that's looking from, a different angle. As you know, I use this piece of artwork that says you can't read the label of the jar you're in. And so this practice of doing this clarity exercise just sort of developed out of working with these companies and began to spread into working with all kinds of different businesses and individuals and personal branding and career, because it's all the same process. Let's bring the strengths to the surface. Let's take a look at the opportunities, and let's build the messaging around what really matters the most.
So synchronizing synergistic teams for homogeneous win-win situations. That's my new tagline. Is that really clear, Steve?
Yeah, about clear is about 90% of the businesses I see out there that think jargon is a way of communicating. And jargon, as I have made the point many years, is just noise. It's just noise. If you want to blend in, then use jargon because you're going to sound just like everybody else, and then you'll be ignored.
Yeah, I totally agree. Jargon does not work. We have to be really clear with our customers. That quote that you use, that piece of artwork, is from Hugh McLeod. For those of you that are thinking, that sounds familiar, but I'm not quite sure where to place. He's gapingvoid.com. If you don't know Hugh, really smart guy. Doodles on the back of business cards is how he got started, and now does a lot of cool artwork. So just want to give full credit there to Hugh. So Steve, that has been, kind of your mantra, but why do we struggle when we're inside the jar to see the outside of it? Why is that so hard for us?
One of the reasons is what Steven Pinker from Harvard called the curse of knowledge. And that is that we're so immersed in our own stuff, in our own world, in our own business and all that. We don't actually recognize the distinction between what people do and don't know and what we do and don't know. So we tend to assume too much. We tend to assume that people understand a whole bunch of things that it's taken us quite a bit of time to acquire. So many times we're talking above people's level, and we're not really speaking with simplicity. And the vast majority of our audience out there, and even our customers, are not immersed in the details. They need something very straightforward, very simple, because our minds are busy. We got too much stuff on our minds. If I make it difficult for someone to understand me, they're just not going to. There's too many other distractions. I mean, I got this iPhone here and that over there. It's all more interesting than me going blah, 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 unless I make it really interesting.
Yeah, that makes so much sense there. And the way to kind of pull ourselves out of that and to get really clear is something you call in the book about finding our superpower. So how do we go about, let's define that first, and then how do we go about actually doing that, Steve?
So a superpower is a particular skill or offering that either as an individual or as a business, something that we do really, really well, maybe even uniquely well. And I'm of the persuasion that the vast majority of time, any individual or any business has something, some gift, some ability that's really cool. And again, with the curse of knowledge problem, what happens is something that we do really well, we just assume everybody else can do it well. And we don't realize that that's the differentiator. So many times I've sat down with individuals and talked through what they do and what really lights their eyes up when you talk about their successes. And that's how you find the superpower, by the way, is you talk to people and you say, talk about your 2 or 3 greatest successes. And then you get into the details, and pretty soon what comes to the surface is something magical that they do really well. And they generally are blind to it. They just figure, well, everybody does. No, not everybody does that. And I've had to tell people, do you realize how incredibly rare this thing is that you do? How amazing it is. And they have this perplexed look on their face, like, oh, really? Well, yeah, that's your superpower. And so it often takes somebody from the outside to help us recognize what it is that makes us great.
That makes so much sense. So is it something simple like, hey, I've got really cool glasses, or tell me, is there more to that, Steve?
It can be very complicated. So there are people that are what I call multi-talented, and sometimes you have somebody that could actually do 5 things pretty well. Those are the most fun challenges, because then you have to sort through, okay, you could do this, or you did do this, or you played this role, or you were in sales and you went to marketing, but you really love operations. So it's really a questioning process, and it's almost like a therapy session, Phil, in many ways, where you have to kind of sort through lots of stuff, and there's always something that lights people up about their business or the way they've worked with clients or their individual capabilities. So I tend to focus as a mechanism on tell me stories. And as they tell stories, I just ask, well, why? Why was that so cool? Or what made that particular client encounter great, but this one was awful? Or why did you thrive in this environment, but not in this one? And once you just sort of dig through those basic why questions, it just begins to come into focus. You've got glasses, so you've been to the eye doctor. You know, they click the little things, and it's like that. You ask more and more questions, and all of a sudden it begins. There's the 2020.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, questions and stories certainly help, but knowing our superpower alone, I would argue probably isn't enough, right? We have to figure out, well, who do we serve and what do we do for them? So how do we get there, Steve? How do we figure that out? Because, I might say, okay, well, I'm really good at, helping people sell more.
Right.
But then how do I know, who do I serve and how do I serve them? How do I put that offering together?
So let's say you're great at sales and that's you've identified it. So what that means is that given that you could be great at helping somebody sell library books. You could be great at helping somebody sell cars. You could be selling pipelines in Manitoba. We could go through 6,000 possible things, and you're not going to specialize in those. So somewhere in your background and in your skill set is going to be an avenue of sales that you either have experience in or you're particularly great at or you can learn real quickly. That's going to be the place where you feel most comfortable and where the types of customers you are most able to reach live and breathe. So not everybody can do, for instance, high-tech sales. But if somebody has a history in doing real high-end electron microscope sales to scientists, for instance, they might not be real good at selling luggage in the mall, or vice versa. Now, sales is sales, but you've got to find where the sweet spot is as far as the type of customer you can help most. And that's true of all these different things. Do you work with big companies, small companies? Do you work with the owner? Do you work with the marketing manager? Do you work in this particular vertical, or do you work in this area? These are part of the clarifying questions where there are 7.5 billion people on the planet. They're not all your customer. So starting from there, we're going to have to narrow it down to something that is a sweet spot, what I basically consider a pigeonhole. And you probably have heard many people resist we don't want to be pigeonholed. Actually, you do want to be pigeonholed. Because you want to occupy a specific niche where you belong, where you do your best work, where you have your best customers. That's where you're going to make your money. And I advocate for being pigeonholed because the fact is people are going to put you in a pigeonhole in their mind anyway. They're only going to have one space for you in memory. So why shouldn't it be the space you choose? That's your sweet spot.
Wow. So that's so interesting because you just gave us the tactical way to actually get there. What Seth Godin talked about this morning when he talked about choosing your customer. So I think that's really interesting. These are two books, that play well together because there's a lot of, you get Seth's strategy and Steve's tactical side and brilliance behind that. So as we think about that, though, I'm curious, Steve. Are we talking about extremes here? Are we talking about picking the poles? Or are we talking about picking the middle? I mean, what are we really talking about when we say that we have to, kind of really narrow that pigeonhole in?
So I look at it in four dimensions. When you look at businesses, you're going to have a business that often will focus on a vertical market. So think about a vertical like automobiles or like pharmaceuticals or, you can name any number of others. So you may have a business that's devoted to a vertical, or you may have a business that's devoted to a few verticals, but that's the beginning part of your pigeonhole. You can't serve all verticals. Then there's a domain often with your business. So a domain might be human resources, HR, or training, or sales, or some of these things that cross verticals, but you have a specific functional domain where you do your work and where you live and breathe, or where your customers live and breathe. So now we've narrowed it further. Then I like to think about the type or size of company. So do you work with startups? Do you work with solopreneurs? Do you work with small or emerging companies, mature companies, mega companies, global? There are all these variables, and the fact is that no business works equally well with every size. And so you've got to pick what's your sweetest spot. Somebody that does home installations of security equipment and does a great job with that may not be able to supply all the security equipment for a Ford plant. But the people that do the Ford plant, they don't want to bother with Phil's house. Okay? So you have to choose that pigeonhole. And then there may be a geographical element to your sweet spot. So it may all be local. It may be virtual. It may be global. It could be regional. So as we define these things, Phil, what we do is we inform our own strategy, because you have to channel your energies in a specific direction. You can't do everything. We inform our own strategy so that we're making our best efforts, but we're also equipping our referral partners to know who to refer us to. If somebody just says Phil's great at sales, okay, I'll just send everybody that says something about sales to Phil. Those aren't good referrals, okay? But if Phil says, I do public speaking, and I particularly love working with crowds that are probably over 500 and with these types of manufacturers, and I have a real good track record with this type of company, and these are the themes. Okay, now I know where to put Phil. I know what a good referral is. And so by defining those things, we're going to equip people to refer us accurately. And that's why the second part of this book, the second part of the subtitle is Be Heard, Be Referred. So being clear helps us to get heard, but also helps us to be referred. So because people have to know where to put us.
Awesome. Let's move into that referral piece, because I think the first half is dynamic and wonderful and helpful. And once we get clear, though, now it's like, what the heck do we do with it? So let's talk about that referral. So first, Steve, can you define, how do you define a referral?
Okay, so I talk about, there's a word referral, and there's a phrase I use, an intelligent targeted referral, okay? So that's what I prefer to go after, is an intelligent targeted referral. And that means that what I've done is I've created a word picture or an image or just a very short, vivid phrase in the mind of somebody that pinpoints who I am and what I do. So a couple of years ago, Chris Brogan wrote on my timeline, "Happy birthday to the King of Clarity." And I looked at that thing and I said, wow, that's got some moxie, that phrase, but I like it. And I decided that I would use that for branding, that, okay, I'm the King of Clarity. Because what I'm seeking to do is own a certain space in the minds of people, clarity. And of course, look, who wants to be the pawn of clarity? I want to be the king of clarity. And somebody else said I was, so therefore, fake royalty or not, I'm the king of clarity. But what that does is it creates an image in people's minds. And if somebody needs clarity, what are they going to think of, first of all? Somebody with 200 bullet points behind them, or the king of clarity? So when I did my referral business, and still do in the pharmaceutical industry, I said, I'm the eHarmony of pharmaceutical training. And people understood it. Oh, matchmake. Okay, I get it. And every one of us should equip people with what I call a memory dart that we can put into their minds so that it's this verbal shorthand, and that they can, and typically we want to grab a memory hook that's already existing so that they can easily grasp it. So if I say Phil is the Mercedes of speakers on motivation, let's just say. Well, what that means is I'm positioning you as the expensive, the exclusive, the top notch, whatever. But I don't have to use all those words. All I have to do is steal the concept of a Mercedes. And it's much easier for people to remember.
Absolutely. That's great. So in Made to Stick, they did a similar thing where they talked about an anchor and a twist. So a memory dart is very similar to that. And I remember when you came up with that, it's like, I get that. That makes so much sense that we can do that. So do we always have to, other than buying the book, right? Do we always have to get a coach? I mean, is there can I do like 50 push-ups, Steve, and get there? Or how do I get to these memory darts?
The book has all the principles laid out, and then there's a link inside the book for a worksheet, an interactive worksheet that people can use as they go through the book to do some of these exercises. So some people are capable of coming up with it on their own. Others need help. And by help, it could be a coach. It could be somebody that does branding. It could be someone like the King of Clarity, whatever. I have found, by and large, it's very helpful to get outside help, to bounce ideas around, because, again, we're stuck in our own world. And I have people that I go to who play the opposite role when I'm all in a fog and I'm not clear. And I've had some great people help me with my own clarity, because I can help other people all day and then get totally confused about my stuff because I'm too close to it. By definition, you can't be objective about yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. So the book is Clarity Wins. It's a fantastic book. It's a quick read. I have it on my Kindle right now. I love it. I've read your worksheet. I've watched some of the bonus videos. So how do people, other than just go to Amazon and get it, is there a place where they can get some extra stuff, Steve, so they can really put this into play? Because these are really, really important things that people can use to get clear on their business, be more referable, be heard more, and build their business.
So the book launch is officially tomorrow, but actually it's available now. So if your listeners go to claritywins.org, it goes directly to the Amazon link. And so they can beat the rush and get it on Cyber Monday. And the introductory price is 99 cents on Kindle and $8.99 for the paperback. So it's the best bargain you're ever going to get. And then you have the opportunity to download the bonus videos, the worksheet. I have a Facebook page called King of Clarity, where I do several videos every week, what I call Clarity Over Coffee, 2 to 3 minute videos just on a specific clarity theme. And then there's also a newsletter that comes out, an e-newsletter once a week called Clarity Fuel, that you can also sign up for when you get the other bonus material.
Awesome. So claritywins.org takes you to Amazon. There's some code inside of there. You can get it for 99 cents. So I can't stress this enough, folks. For 99 cents or for almost $10 if you're not Amazon Prime member, you can get clear on your business. You can earn more referrals and be heard by your ideal customer so you can build your business. Steve Woodruff is the guy. I've known Steve for a long time. There's a lot of great stuff out there, but Steve really is the king of clarity. It is. I learn from you, Steve, all the time. I love your videos and your articles, and you're so helpful. Where would people, if they want to connect with you and they're like, Steve, I'm thinking, boy, it would be really good to talk to you because, I can spend $9 or I can spend a couple hours and really get this hammered out. Where would they go so they can get more connected with you?
So the website for me is clarityfuel.com, Clarity, F-U-E-L, all one word, .com. And there are a couple buttons there for setting up a free half-hour call. So if somebody feels like they need some clarity, they need some work on their marketing, their messaging, even their career direction, I'm happy to hop on the phone with people and talk over, 20, 30 minutes, what's going on. And then if it looks like they're going to need a 90-minute or a 2-hour or in some cases a full-day session, then we can hammer that out and say, okay, this is what that's going to look like. I've done sessions virtually using Skype and other modalities, or I do them live, face-to-face, sometimes with small groups in a company and sometimes one-to-one. But it's a process that amazingly is common all across the board. So what I'm doing is I'm asking questions, surfacing strengths, figuring out how this is going to be positioned in a marketplace, and then we craft the words that get it to a real clear set of statements and a memory dart. And whether that's for an individual or a business, it's all the same.
Awesome. Awesome. So love that. Such great stuff, Steve. So I'm going to close with one quote that you have that I really love from the book. It's no great work was ever accomplished without focus, a defined direction and purpose. Top athletes win by focusing on one sport and not several. So folks, if you're listening in, you've got a few weeks here before the end of 2018. Whenever you're listening to this, get clear on what you got. Check out claritywins.org. It goes right to the book on Amazon. You get some great worksheets. You get videos from Steve. If you want to work with Steve, go to clarityfuel.com and just spend some time on your message. Get clear so you can be heard. Steve Woodruff, thanks so much for spending some time with us today, man. You're the best. I appreciate
Thanks, Phil.
it so much, man.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.